Cool. Alright, hi everyone. My name's Scotty, like I said before, and I'll be facilitating this session. If you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand, and also keep in mind we've got plenty of kind of one-to-one times as well, and also the Facebook page that Paul mentioned before. And I guess I just wanted to start by asking why theatre anywhere? Why not theatre on the stage in the traditional theatre space that we're all accustomed to? Why don't you want us to use the stages and the spaces?
Really good question. Look, there are a number of different reasons. I'll start with to jump in, right? And the first thing is that I really do believe in Shakespeare's maxim that the world is a stage, and I feel as a society we've grown too used to this idea of performance happening in a particular space. You must go to a theatre to see a space, and building these spaces has really continued to reinforce this idea. So from a really high-level point of view, that is one of the reasons why the whole idea for the festival, to actually get past that, to go, look, storytelling actually belongs to us all. We shouldn't feel we have to outsource it to Netflix or to what's happening on the stage. So that's really the core of it. From a creative point of view, the thing is that it allows you to create something which becomes your space, and whether that's not just thinking about the traditional fourth wall, but this whole idea that we go to such lengths to convert black boxes into the space that we want. Go and see a show and they convert it into a bookstore, or they convert it into an apartment. You go, well, why not actually just put it in an apartment or a bookstore and put the energy into the actual creation of the work? So I really feel that enables more focus to be put on the actual creation of the work. And also, for a lot of the types of works that I know I want to see, that people want to follow, I don't think the theatre is the best place for it. It puts too many constraints on it. There's too much of a stigma attached to it, and you're able to have such much more open relationship with the audience when you're not up on a stage saying, right, I'm here, listen to me. And then when you put mics on, you're basically saying, look, just shut the hell up and let us do our thing. And it's really taking those two steps away so that what you're talking about, the audience and the cast, becomes much, a very thin line and crosses both ways, which is far more interesting.
So in terms of stigma around theatre, are we talking about like accessibility for the audience as well?
I think accessibility, yes, but also accessing new audiences, people that wouldn't usually come to a theatre performance or a show. So it's about embedding arts and culture in our everyday lives, and the festival gives you a chance to do that because we do get to bring it into conventional space, non-conventional theatre spaces, but everyday spaces. And I think that's one of the great benefits. It would be a richer society if we had that happening all the time.
And to add to that, I think the idea of storytelling, around the campfire, it was an engaging space. And it really is about the story, not the bells and whistles and the smoke. You don't want people walking away going, wow, that was really spectacular, but no story being taken away. So I think it's really drawing back down to that idea of what, where it all began, really. And I think one of the key things that really hit me at the festival this year, and my heart sang, was at actually a show Toni had in her house called Back to the Crossroads, and it had some spoken word, as part of it. And probably about 3 or 4 people, because I was running the bar. It's always a good place to be. You get to kind of hear how people are feeling. And a number of people said, is that spoken word? I love spoken word. And I was, as a poet and a spoken word, and someone who likes to enable others to get out there and share their story in that medium, it's like, this is it. Oh, I love this festival. And I've just come back from Remix, where, you know, people in very conventional spaces, Remix is an arts and creative summit in Sydney, and, you know, the museums, the art galleries, the libraries are really expanding this idea of how do we go out and break these kind of conventional spaces, because we're losing connection with people, you know. And then of course people go back. Even the Royal Shakespeare Society is, you know, it's gone digitally crazily mad, and their audiences are billions outside of the 1,000 that come to their theatre every night. So, you know, hands off to, you know, thank you Paul for, you know, really being at such a precipice to bring all this stuff forward.
And I think also that point about the space you're talking about, back to the crossroads.
Is that picture actually?
Yeah, sure it is.
It's our kitchen.
Is really highlights two key things. One is, and it's something always drumming into people, is this idea of a lot of people come to the festival and think, okay, right, how would I do this show in a theatre? And they go, actually, I'm going into this space and it doesn't have all this stuff, so I'm going to have to bring all that stuff in. It's like that you've got to bring in, you know, the lighting tech and sound tech, and that you have to bring in a stage so it's kind of up, all that kind of stuff. And that is, I think you actually got to try and avoid, really, and to say it's one, because it's make it more costly for you, but also the whole thing is structured so that you can have, yes, an audience of this size, or be capacity size, or it might be 10, might be 15. Don't need all the, you know, acoustic and lighting aids to focus attention that you would if you were, you know, 300, 400, 1,000 seat venue. Yeah, you need to focus people's attention, but with the smaller space, you know, you don't need to. And I think that was sort of, you know, one of the, you know, great examples of doing that. You know, and there are many that did. So yeah, that's right.
When I did a show a few years ago for Anywhere Festival, it was on a bridge right around the corner from my house. And our whole kind of marketing plan that we eventually came up with was that because I was rehearsing on the bridge all the time, people would cross the bridge and ask me what I was doing, and I'd say I'm rehearsing for a show, and I'd give them a flyer. And the whole marketing campaign became letterbox drops in essentially like a 1 kilometre radius of my house, of this venue, and then also just like Facebook sort of thing. And we ended up having a sold out season, and we had people coming to the show who were my neighbours and who were the person down the road with the dog and 2 kids, etc., etc. Oh yeah, that's close. Yeah. So the cool, I think the yes, the validate my choices.
Yes.
I guess that brings that thought around like audiences, and the most profound reaction I had from that show was that people were saying, "Oh, I didn't know theatre was this. I didn't know it could be this thing." So I was interacting with people every night and every afternoon when I was rehearsing, who assumed that theatre was that for Brisbane you had to go to QPAC and you had to pay $120, which is great. I love going. I love going to QPAC. I really do. However, then there was this kind of new thing of they'd never kind of seen that. Have you got any advice around that sort of? Maybe it's marketing, maybe it's audience, maybe it's that sort of space around, especially on the Sunshine Coast. How do you think you can establish a culture around this type of site-based art form that people will come?
Toni can probably attest to this a little bit as well. But last year, they did Little Sea Theatre Company did Romeo and Juliet in the natural. It's a sort of Grecian amphitheatre built in the 1990s, I think. It's kind of a little bit ugly, but it overlooks this amazing lake, Lake McDonald, and Romeo and Juliet is such a romantic, tragedy. The setting was so perfect for that, and I knew because our children were involved in the production as well, and they did a lot of on-site rehearsals for that, and they used that space so wonderfully. They were climbing pillars and jumping from balcony. They've got these kind of two little brick balconies, and it just was seamless for the production, and they got 250 people at each show. They only did 2 shows, and they made quite a lot of money as a result of being able to get so many people. And a lot of people just came on the day who were in the Botanic Gardens and know what's going on. There was no tech, there was no mics, there was no lights. They did it so that the final scene was the sunset. Over the lake, which was truly beautiful. And
part of the reason, though, that they did do so many rehearsals there was to build up the kids' vocals, so that they could be heard, because they're all kids. So it's really about
projection. It was great vocal training for them, but also just you could see that they'd spent so much time on the site because of the way the production flowed. And there was a lot of people that then came, I saw these guys rehearsing a couple of weeks ago when I was having a walk in the gardens, or I was on the boat on the lake, because it's a recreational boating lake as well. It's also the water source for Noosa Council. So, there's all these beautiful connections, and I think that trying to get on site if you can, and also not being shy about saying to your friends, hey, I've got this show happening, come along. I mean, we're all used to that, but
and Sunshine Coast has been that for many years. I know lots of you have performed here, and it really is about friends, family, and then we're kind of a big community that's spread across many, many tribes. But, so on that, I think, absolutely, it's important to build that community. And really what you did in your neighbourhood, the Bridge. I did a show this year at Cafe Create, which was a hardware store. Fantastic. It was so pretty and beautiful at the end of it, you wouldn't believe it was a hardware store. But that was a show that developed through 10 months of doing kind of story crafting and performance workshops with the Nycole Community Centre, so a group of women there. So it kind of came straight from that community grassroots up, and it was a sellout show. And those women have now gone on to do incredible things. So it's kind of, there is that sort of sense of community as well.
And I think it's interesting with both those shows where they were in one space, and something that I've had conversation with a couple of you, I think you, Troy, about saying, okay, should we do a run just using one space, or should we use a number of different spaces? I know for your show, for dance studio, and it's a look. One of the things about this festival is it is tapping into those other tribes. So the difference between you doing, say, a 6-show run and doing it at one space, as opposed to doing that in actually 2 nights in 3 venues, or 6 different ones. They're sort of in different parts of Brisbane, but are the kind of spaces where basically they've got differences, but they've got similarities, and the play works for that. All of a sudden, you've got that ability to extend your audience with just a little bit of extra setup time, because obviously you've got a number of different relationships. The advantage with it being with that kind of idea is also you've got basically a number of one-off events. So when you're marketing to each of those, around each of those geographic areas, they know there is just one choice. It's like that marketing story about the person who had 2 types of jam, market stall, and they sold all the jam, and please anyone tell me if I've got this completely wrong. And they sold all the jam. They went, this is great. Okay, so what we do is we'll come up with some new flavours. So they went back to the market store with 20 different flavours of jam, and didn't sell any of it because everybody was just so confused they didn't know which one to buy. And that this is sort of part of that idea. If you have a long run, more people are likely to go, oh, I'm not sure which day I'll see it, I'll just put that decision off. I'll see it next week, oh no, it's too late. So this idea of tapping into a number of different communities and different spaces is, I think, something that hasn't been explored as much as I think it should, and it's worked really well for people that have done it. So I really do push that along. And also, it's part of the producer packing toolkit that will be out there up online over the next couple of days, where you've got a couple of bits of resources so that you know how to go to a venue if you happen to stumble across it. But also what we want to do this year, because we're so early, is actually be a lot more open about enabling everybody to be able to see what everybody else is looking for, so that it's not just us picking up on potential connections and going, actually you should do it at 7 o'clock and 8:30 at the same venue, but it also gives you the opportunity to check that as well, or to see that you look at this kind of venue, and then someone over here goes, oh, actually I know someone who's got that kind of venue. In the past we've just tried to manage that ourselves, and people have come to us registering with as much detail as possible, whereas we want to open that up. And we've got that timing up until the 14th or the 15th of February. There's what we call the box office deadline, which is basically when everything needs to be confirmed. So we've got a couple of months over which that's happening, and it means that when people are saying, oh look, there are 3 different people looking for hardware stores, or a particular hardware store, or Bunnings or whatever, then we can potentially take the lead and go in and just have that first conversation instead of them getting 17 different people approaching them.
Well, can I just say, in the marketing and sort of from a producer's perspective, Facebook ads, like if you want to, you can note the radius of where your show is, and you can literally market to those people really quite cost effectively. So I find that that's been a bit of a revelation for me, in being able to sell out a few times when we've done Back to the Crossroads. So, and it's just, I can say, oh, people within a 10k radius of the venue, or a 20k radius of Kevin Sunder's, or a 50. But they all receive the ads. We all, most people use Facebook and they can see the sponsored ads that come up, but it's really, really effective and really cheap. And I think just the marketing that's sort of given to you as part of the festival and the festival program, the festival program is always look really schmick. People want to be on board. Councils in Sunshine Coast and Noosa are really on board this year, whereas this year, in 2017, we were trying to sort of go it alone a bit, to prove our concept. And next year we're sort of bigger and better, and people know about the festival, so there's a whole lot of people that have jumped on board as a result of that. And I just think that getting those flyers out and the programs out near where you're actually doing the show is a really good idea.
Another thing for marketing that really works, that's very, very anywhere, is that people say, oh, I've always wanted to get into that space. So, we've got talk of there's ideas about the Lighthouse, or this amazing tunnel, or someone saying a laundromat. I always want to see a show on a laundromat too. Yeah. And that really, draws people. And this year we had, Tim Ross, Men About the House, doing a show in these really iconic Sunshine Coast homes. I think I happened to be doing front of house at Gabrielle Pool's house up at a lot of people there to see Toni Ross, don't get me wrong, and he was entertaining and amazing. Most people were like, I always wanted to see inside this house. I was going to sneak down back here. So think about that venue as well. It's not just the story that we've been telling.
And talking to someone like Tim, I said to him, because he does this Man About the House show everywhere, all over the world now. He's in London and does it in Venice and all kinds of places. But I said, is it, people come for the show, they come for the venue. He said, I really think it's 50-50. And it's part of the intrigue of seeing something that you wouldn't normally see in a new place. You know, seeing Lindsay Pollock in Bunnings.
As an independent artist, sometimes I'm produced, sometimes I'm not.
Yeah.
And I said to, when we were in our group out there discussing what we were going to do for the day, I said I didn't realise until I was kind of 3 years along into my career that there was a thing called a producer. You know, I thought you just grinded away at open mics and things and someone would find you and discover you and help you put stuff on. And I realised that's very, very rare. And I would spend money on posters, I would spend money on flyers, and now I spend money on Facebook ads. And I don't have a single clue what works. I don't know what's the most effective and what I'm just throwing money at a wall for. Do you have any help me?
Look, okay. I mean, there's a whole advertising budget, 50% of it works, but you don't know which 50%. And to a large degree, that is true. The great thing with Facebook, for all its things that I don't like about it, things like that, and Google AdWords, they're things that you got $5, you can do something with it, and also depending on how much you believe their figures, at least you're able to track it. Whereas you put an ad in the paper, don't put an ad in the paper. It's so hard to find out how that works, other than getting feedback from the ticket buyers, or when we ask that question when people buy tickets, saying, "Well, how did you find out?" And then most people say, "Oh, a friend told me." So it is really hard. I think to think of is don't just rely on one thing. Secondly, it's this idea of building up your tribe and your community, and this also builds into what your aims are as individuals or as a company, because and also why you're doing this festival. If it's to bring in new audiences that are then wanting to get onto your effectively onto your mailing list, to be able to come back and see other shows that you're doing, then the type of show that you're going to do is going to be different than one where it might be for you've got a lot of people already, and you're going, right, this is something that is for a bit different for our regular audience. But yeah, I'd say don't rely on one thing. Build up the community, and it's a thing that I'd say people still don't do much of. So, I mean, marketing, getting face out there, it's hard. Telling people your idea all the time. Good thing about it is you can see whether your idea is sticking, and that's why a lot of people don't like doing it, because by not doing it, they don't have to actually have that hard conversation with themselves. You go, actually, is anyone actually interested in this? By getting out, for example, you've got performing in a couple of different spaces. There might be two different businesses in different locations. You obviously get them on board, so you have to explain the idea to them, and they like it. And then you spend whether it's half a day around each of them, introducing the idea and giving them some material so that they can promote the show from that point of view, and it builds up the word of mouth locally. Because we find so many the people that come to a show are quite local to the actual venue, particularly for Brisbane. We can track that a bit better. They're either quite local or they come from a long way away. So yeah, I would say it's about building up the tribe. Don't rely on one thing.
Yeah, and it's a really sort of practical example of that. We had a show in the bunker at the Imperial Hotel at Yamundi. So they have a massive kind of promotional thing, plus you've got anywhere. But we chose 2 o'clock on a Saturday. If anyone knows Yamundi, you've got this massive market that brings in a couple $1 million a year. it's packed till 1 o'clock on a Saturday. Then everyone goes to the pub to have lunch. And at the back of the pub is this bunker. And we had to close the door. We couldn't fit any more people in. And I'm thinking, you know, so these kinds of ideas.
Yeah. Look, the timing when you choose to put your show on can make a huge difference, because it'll just be at a time where, okay, you think, yeah, 7 o'clock's great, but you find that that's not a time when people are going by that place. You know, 5:30 could work, or it could be that it's actually a place that's right beside a tree full of rosellas, and you're not going to hear a damn thing at 7 o'clock. So it is something where you do have to do that bit of scouting to find out what time is going to work.
I want to get to that quarry.
I was just thinking logistically too, because I work with people with disabilities, so it's not just about accessibility, it's about how do we get stages at there, how do we, set up something that they can actually dance on. Because, there's a lot of other things that go into.
Yeah, I think we need to talk a bit more about that. As much as possible. I love the idea of quarry, but I would be looking at something that would be able to work in that space without having to do too much with it.
Yeah.
And that's the challenge.
It depends on the solar quarry. The one in Toowoomba was fantastic years ago. I went and saw, I can't remember, they had a big production in the quarry in Toowoomba.
That was the person that
and there were flat, clean, beautiful spaces where it was just a natural theatre. So I think it's about checking out the spaces.
Yeah. Can I just pick up, I know we're almost ready for a break, but just wanted to pick up on your help me point. So I really think Nicole's right about, not putting all your eggs in one basket, but I think about how cost effective your marketing is, because we're trying to encourage people to take the creative risks, not the financial risks in their productions. Don't be scared to give something a crack either. Like, give it a go. It doesn't matter if it's not, you don't have to sold out season. You might learn from it and might go on to another festival, or it might come back the following year bigger and better. So, really, be brave, and I wouldn't throw lots of money at printed materials, because the festival kind of does that for you anyway. But I would say definitely, if you're in a business, put a poster up in the venue or near the venue, so people know they make this other association with the place. And I really think we're all spending so much more time looking at our phones that you just look around everywhere. People are always on their phone, so you really need the digital marketing thing is, for me, where I think it's where it's at.
It is, but also with the business bit, the other thing I'd add on there is one of the other things you've got, because you've got such time, if you're putting something on in a business, it enables you to integrate something with the marketing they do. Now, whether it's a bookstore that puts out a monthly flyer with what new books that they've got on, or they've already got any news list, or they've got they have a Facebook page. I found in the past a lot of just being hesitant about saying, oh look, okay, well, we're putting on the show. We want you to do this, and this through your marketing, or what can you do? Because this is a special event that's happening in your space that is going to be bringing people that don't come into your space normally. But we also know that the people that aren't your regular customers are going to get annoyed if they find out this thing has happened and they didn't know about it. It's straight away that you're looking at 15-20% of your audience there just through the actual venue itself.
And university websites and student clubs.
Use those guys. Use them.
One other thing we found successful is putting together our own stories for our local Quest newspapers or the Sunshine Coast.
Totally.
And your photograph, for example, that you just had up there, shots like that during your rehearsal and setup, because what we found is when there's a slow news day or they've got a gap,
they might necessarily be interested. But if you've got a great photo and it's a community-based story, it's free advertising, and something like your original, you have to go there, or a fabulous house.
It's true,
and it's all free, you know.
And people read on the Sunshine Coast. We
Yeah.
that free newspaper.
It's a free newspaper.
And we all read it.
Free
It's somewhere in the house. Usually it's smaller room in the house.
It is.
And the producer pack helps you craft all those media releases and things like that.
And obviously we're happy for you to chuck it over to us as well. Look, we obviously have a couple of different purposes, and we obviously do our main launch for the festival, but really we are also more able to also help people that are helping themselves as well. I mean, obviously we want to, people that are struggling, we want to be able to help that way. But if you come and say, okay, look, we've got this media release, we're going to be sending it to so-and-so, we're able to say, well, okay, well, that's cool, actually there's another journo that you should be sending it to, or actually we've just sent something to them today, maybe send it tomorrow, and if you come this week, we can do that kind of stuff. And as I said, it is dependent, but the great thing we've got is you've got colour and weird locations, and that's something that, particularly from a print media point of view, how it works, really well. For a TV, it's something where, it's much harder to get it, but it tends to have to be really the day or the day before. So it's not something you can really rely on. Whereas the press will do, the print will do. They'll do it a couple of weeks out or connected to the launch.
Yeah, and radio is good too. Like getting on and taking one of your actors in with you, doing radio. I think it's nice, especially if you've got lovely character voices or you've got music as part of your show. That just sort of breaks it up, and they're always looking for material.
And like
we can help you with some of that stuff as well. And the quirkier your venue, often, the more media coverage you get. You said that every year there's a show in a toilet.
And look, I'm actually connected to that. I mean, one thing, and absolutely guarantee that happens. The main thing that the press comes to us asking for when we launch the festival is like, okay, give us your 10 weirdest locations. So I'm not saying you should choose a really weird location, because but I am saying that if you go, oh, we're just going to perform in a pub or and not do anything unusual with it, you're going to struggle to get any media attention, because that's not really it's not really, I suppose it's unique in the festival, but it's not unique for anything else. So
I have this since I've become involved with Anywhere Festival, I've talked to a lot of people about it, including myself, and there seems to be two things that are happening. And correct me if I'm wrong. One is that artists access their craft in affordable, logistically feasible ways, in spaces where you don't have to run through heaps of rings just to get access to be able to do your show. So it becomes this, I've got a show and I want to do it somewhere, I'll do it anyway. Then there's this other thing that goes, we want artists to create stories based on site and around space. So site-specific art, immersive art, this type of work that speaks on spaces, reflects on the stories there, reflects on the country. How do you maintain this, which is your selling point? Because it's kind of like oh yes, I can do my show and it won't cost me the earth, and I won't have to apply 6 months before we get a $10,000 grant, I can just do it. And how do you also balance with this essential source of innovation and establishing a whole new culture within an art space that says, we want site-specific art, we want these stories, and we want this space here to be utilized in a way that it is this space, not a story in this space because it's aesthetically pleasing, but it's no, this is this space. This is exactly, this show can only exist here. How do you balance encouraging this while also maintaining this as like you're kind of like, yay, but also could you maybe do this?
I've got an example that draws it together. So I've always had this, since a friend of mine told me about seeing a Buddhist monk, someone trying to explain to a Buddhist monk what the idea of a storage shed was. And the Buddhist monk was going, why? And yeah, that whole idea of consumerism, capitalist kind of thing. So I've always had this story ticking over. And I think if it was anywhere theatre that I was going, I've got to get a storage shed. It has to be in a storage shed. And the audience interaction, like get them to carry the boxes, get them to grab and pack and unpack, and you know. So I think that to me brought this real desire that's kind of come. I could have written a novel about this, but now I'm seeing it, and I'm seeing it have an impact that's greater because of that space and going into that space. That's sort of one, whereas they were two separate things that have now sort of come together. That's one example.
I think I would nearly say, adding on to that, that I nearly see there being three different streams in a way, where you've got, I'll call it anywhere theatre, where it's something where it could go anywhere. It's not particularly a story that resonates with that space, but it is an aesthetically pleasing space. But you've still got this approach to performance that is moving as much of the check as possible and just keeping it on the story, around the campfire. So I think you have that. I think then you have what's called site-specific within a genre, within a type. So as an example, using a dance studio, doesn't matter what kind of dance studio, but it's a good dance studio. And that means that that's something you could get, once again, go to the funding for. Beyond a particular space, and you go, actually, look, there's something we could potentially tour to different dance studios. Right? Then the final part being actually site-specific, where the story resonates with that actual location, and it has to be there. We had Parramatta Festival where they had a particular story about the female factory that was there, and with the convicts, and that. All the stories were of the women that were in that particular location, and so it had to be there. Even though there are other female factories, ones up here as well, this one was specific to that location, and it became something that became a monthly event for them. So I don't see that they clash. They're just three different approaches, but I think it's important to know which of those three you feel your ideas.
And they all round out the festival, I think, it's kind of, it's probably great.
Yeah, I was going to say.